Okay. After boring nations as the others, now we're going to talk about Brazil. So if we think about what Brazilian people do, well, they play football on the beach, then they dance samba during the carnival, and they produce. So I can tell you a secret: they produce, they work, and they produce. So we're talking about the second largest economy in America and this number 6 in the world. So GDP for Brazil, this is how it is structured. Services is the major part of the GDP, 69%. Then, especially with hospitality and financial services. Then we have industry. Brazil is big in mining and energy, especially petroleum. And the agriculture sector is just 5.5%, so sugar canes and soybeans. Okay, next slide, thank you. The labor force, more than 100 million people are part of the labor force, and by occupation, the agriculture sector is 10%. So more people are employed in agriculture than how much it accounts for the GDP. If we want to have a look at unemployment rate, well, from 2012 to now, the trend has been negative. So we went from 8% of unemployment rate to 4.9%. That is our current unemployment rate. But as we always say, like, friend is your friend until it's not. So this is what we're gonna expect. So an increase in unemployment rate for the next almost 15 years, more than 15 years actually, and we're gonna go to 6.4% by 2030.
Yeah, thanks, Vincenzo. Yeah, so here we're looking at the exchange rate between the dollar and the Brazilian real. Our most recent reading, it was at 2.3066, and as you can see, kind of over the past 6 months, it's been trading in a fairly tight band at 220 to 230. We expect this to broadly continue over the short term, maybe go slightly higher in favour of the dollar, because of what some people have said about kind of hawkish Fed sentiment and outflows out of the emerging markets towards safe havens. Inflation. So inflation, the most recent reading was at the end of August. That was 6.51% year-on-year increase in CPI, just above their target cap, which is 6.5%. The bottom range is 2.5%, so right at the top of that at the moment. In terms of a kind of a future forecast, I think it's going to probably hover around that 6.5% mark, partly because yesterday the Brazilian Central Bank came out with their minutes from their most recent meeting, which said they were going to keep their base rate, which is called the Selic rate, at 11% in the short term until the end of the year. I think there's a chance that it actually goes higher than 6.5%, partly because we've got the elections coming up in October, and the party leading the polls have kind of suggested that their economic policy might be slightly more in favour of growth rather than controlling inflation. And now pass over to Nancy.
Thank you. I'm going to look at GDP growth in Brazil. So if we just talk about briefly before 2008, so from 2000 till 2008, GDP grew from $500 billion all the way to $2.5 trillion, which was just before the recession. So it's common knowledge that as it's one of the biggest emerging markets and it occupies the B in BRICS. If we look at the graph from 2007 to now, sort of a downward trend, but pretty much constant GDP growth rate. It's not really going to go up much, not really going to go down. The major industries, as has been talked about, is expanded. The services industry accounts for 67.5% of this GDP growth. But should you invest in Brazil? Well, this picture pretty much summarises what we think about investing in Brazil in the next few years. Now, I know that it's a great emerging market, and there are lots of expanding industries, but it's been downgraded by Moody's to BBB minus. It's entered a recession for the first time in 5 years, and that's by the broad definition of a recession being 2 consecutive periods of negative growth. It's got problems with government spending. They're starving in certain industries and then pumping lots of money into other ones. They've not really got a consistent government spending plan. there are elections coming up, as he mentioned, in October, and obviously the results of that will depend on what's going to happen. But at the moment, it looks like Brazil's not a great place to invest, not really as safe as it was before, and not great for certain risk-averse investors. I'd say if you're a risky investor, then you can certainly look at Brazil for your investment, and you will make substantial returns, but at what risk factor? So we suggest probably not investing for the time being, and to look for the results of the October election before any decisions are made. Thank you.